Welcome to the Post-Work podcast at Kalmark Studios Bunker, somewhere hidden in Berlin. I'm Pablo Denegri, your host, and today's guest is Chinese photographer and visual artist Ming Lu. Ming, thank you very much for being here.
I'm happy to be here.
Ming, you finished school not so long ago. You don't have such a long career, but still your work has a very distinctive style that combines minimally two different cultures or worlds. How do you think this started in a way?
Well, because I had all my art education here in Europe, so I moved to Britain for high school, and then I had my bachelor and master degree. And it was like a certain point. It's the moment that I realized like the art language I have been learning and using is very westernized. So it is still now. And I start to reflect and self-criticize and to find my own identity and bring the mixture of culture together in my work and try to like bridge this gap.
Yeah. And you feel in China you grew up also consuming kind of Western culture in some, cultural products you were consuming or so? Did you already had this mix growing up in China?
Yeah, when I was a little kid, I was living with my grandma, and my mom, she always bought me like all these foreign comic books or like snacks from Shanghai and bring it to me. And it also, I watched these Tom and Jerry cartoons like on TV, and they're mixed with the local cartoons.
So Tom and Jerry is very old. It's like my mother, I think, was seeing Tom and Jerry.
It was very... when I was in my childhood, it was like the 90s. Like all my childhood friends was watching it at that moment. Yeah.
And this, let's say, mix of worlds or cultures is not only like Eastern and Western, but it's also in a way transgenerational, right? Because the world of your grandparents, maybe, of your parents was already a very different world, maybe, in sense of access to the kind of culture you would have access to. Do you think that this is something that you experienced or were conscious about when you were growing up, or was this natural for you?
Well, it feels natural for me because, like, I guess, like, my generation is experiencing the same thing. And when I was growing up, like, my grandparents always tell me, like, how the world you are living right now is so different with, like, how they grew up.
They remind you always, yeah.
Like, always, yeah. Like you are so... Like the children like nowadays they're so happy like with all these books and toys and cakes for your birthday and it is like they're trying to I guess to be educative in a way for you to be precious of what you are having.
I understand in a way. I experienced the pre-internet world, you know, and to people that haven't experienced it, I feel kind of like the obligation to tell them, you know, the world was very different before. Like it wasn't always this easy with internet, and so I kind of understand it. So in a way, you grew up with this consciousness of there was this gap of living in the new world in a way that. For the way that it changed, you are the one of, you can say, the first generation that is experiencing this world or this, let's say, relation of China with the rest of the world in a way, right? And the connection with Europe, you started when you were little. You told me you were on vacation.
Yeah, it was like my junior high school, me and my mom, doing like all the kinds of tourist thing, but also going to some art galleries and museums, yeah.
Okay, so they put you already in contact with art.
Yeah, but that was when I was already like 14, 15. Yeah, I didn't had like any art education when I was in China, and it was first time I saw like post modern and contemporary art when I entered Tate Modern as a tourist when I was like 14, and I was like, oh my God, this is art. Why? Yeah,
Art is the traditional Western, let's say, way.
Yeah.
Like modern art. But what do you say that in China do you have access to this kind of?
No, it was like normal for students to. I studied like physics, chemistry, geography, like English, mathematics. So it's very science rather than art.
It's mostly science oriented.
Yeah, but also like history. Like what's the others? I don't even remember. It's like a long time ago.
And this first encounter with art, as you experienced, you felt it was the first time. And what do you feel that happened afterwards?
It was a shock, but I wasn't thinking like to be an artist. I was writing a lot and doing photography. The reason I started to do photography was to take the photos of the people I talked to, and I was writing their stories, so I took photos of them. So at the beginning, I remember when I was applying for my bachelor degree, like the tutor was saying, oh, you are very journalistic. And I was doing all this documentary photography for like a year or two, like at the beginning. Yeah.
And you worked as a freelance journalist for a time, no? You told me years after.
Yeah, when I was in London, because like I was trying out different things, and I did like I was working at the Chinese Weekly.
Yeah.
Like it was, but it's called Weekly, but it was a magazine. So I was writing for their art column, like interviewing like all the artists and also other people. Sometimes writers like Peter Hessler, like artists like Martin Parr. So I was like interviewing them, writing their stories, and using the photograph for the magazine layout. Yeah.
You were doing everything. Let's say the photos and the
writing. Yeah.
And did you enjoy this journalist activity?
Yeah, because I was very eager to learn the other people's stories and how they approach art and what they were thinking, and like I read like a lot, and it was like until a certain point, I think, okay, now after I talked to them like for like 2 years, now I want to do my own project. It's just like to express what I think and experienced, because I was writing about other people's experience for really.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Of course, this show in a way is also about that. It's an opportunity to get to know more personally the journey or the search of the artists or human beings. Let's say they all have their story, right? And you were doing this while you were studying in the UK.
Yeah. So I was like 3 days in college, 2 days at the editorial team in that building, I think near Holborn, and then 1 day maybe go out, take photograph, and doing interviews, 1 day for writing. So I was quite
Sounds very cool.
Sounds very
cool. Sounds very cool. I was as a kid, I was fan of Superman, and I totally loved that Clark Kent is Superman's alter ego. I was kind of a journalist, a geek nerd, with the glasses. He was like my role model in the way. I found that very cool. And how old were you when you arrived to UK for the first time to stay in a way?
17.
Very young.
Yeah.
I mean, but you arrived alone. Decided already to live there alone.
Yeah, but I enjoyed the freedom a lot at that time. Like no parents, just me, and the foreign culture, and so much to experience and to learn.
Yeah. You had already resources, as you say. You are this generation who is much more in contact with Western culture, and so you had already your tools to integrate yourself.
Yeah.
But what were the things that you found that shocked you in the same way that going to the museum shocked you, but cultural. Did you find some cultural shock on some aspect that you recall?
I guess because my A levels, like I did 1 year A level, and then I went to art and design foundation.
Okay.
And in the 1 year A level, I guess what shocked me the most is more about the art, like what I'm learning at that time. Because like I was in Cambridge, and it's a quite peaceful academic town. It's not like London, like so much things are going on.
Right.
Yeah, so I was learning a lot, but in life, like it was like what I expected, and I really enjoyed, especially the beginning part. Yeah.
And you were surprised that this was something you would study in a way, because it's not that common in China to study these kind of things?
I mean, like for general education, like the compulsory education, not compulsory, but like the free education we had from primary school to junior high school, like we did had fine art for once a week, like when I was in primary school, but not anymore in junior high school. And it is very different, because when I came here, like art is more about the concept. It is also about how you experiment with the technique and the material to realize your idea. And I did like art history, and to learn how the art has become like from the ancient Greece to nowadays. And this development like kind of fascinates me.
It's interesting because that art history is a very Western view of art history, right? It starts in the Greeks because it's the origin of Western culture in a way.
The first sentence my art history tutor taught me is like, okay, the art history we're learning here is the art history of Europe. Yeah, because they were like a Chinese and Japanese student in the class.
Right. Yeah, it's that's amazing, but it's what's called Eurocentrism, you know, like the way things are written. I come from an ex-colonial country, and so we have this periphery relation to Europe. So, but what you would study always is always history of Europe in a way, right? This is it's still very complex for me, because you never get the whole story, you know. And studying photography in UK, when did you decided to start working, or maybe you did it later, but to start working with elements that had to do with your Chinese tradition?
It was that I think it was the final year in my uni, in my bachelor degree. Like I realized, like if you look at my work without looking at me, there was like no difference between like my work and my British classmates, like their work. And when I look, it was also the time when I look at the recent like art history, like the modern art, and the postmodern, the contemporary, and I see like there were some connections, like how the contemporary artists like referenced, and like there was like a link all the way back, and I was really fascinated. I got like really into it, and I was like, okay, I want to bring something from my culture and to create, and I'm still trying like to build this art languages, like combining the both. Yeah, so since then, like until now, that is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, and I noticed that you decided this, you said, at the end of the uni and so, but then this gave you a very strong, I think, thematic topic, or how can I say it, way of approaching the composition of the artworks, which is not necessarily related to one material or one technique, but it's more about trying out how different techniques and different materials work in this juxtaposition you make with the Chinese culture and pop, let's say, contemporary Western culture. And you do this very rigorously in every series of work you have, even if it's painting or fabric or sculpture, or they have this in common, let's say. This is like, and I find it very interesting because it's very solid from this perspective already. You are very sure what you're doing, and at the same time you are not trying to preach anything, like to give to teach or to give a class or anything. It's like you have a playful approach to your works. Of course, we will leave some links in the description of. It's very visual, a lot of it, to understand it. But they have this in common. What would you say about this playful approach that your works have, and that, from my perspective, it gives them this kind of freshness in a way, even though there's a lot of content and reference to iconography, symbolism, and from different cultures and so, right? But they have, is my reading, this in common, the playful approach in a way.
I mean, like, I think it's a lot to do with my personality as well. Because at the beginning, like, with either my writing or my work, I want it to be playful, to have like this humor element in it. So they are in my like porcelain ducks and in my other like the toy sculptures as well. Yeah, because like humor has like a power. It like strikes you and it can also, it makes you enjoy, but also makes you to reflect. Yeah. In general, like at this moment, like I don't normally enjoy so much like the art that's very educative, like trying to tell you like what you should do.
To
and
solemn or...
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Sometimes humor can have this awakening effect, you know, it's like a spark, because structure of humor, you studied this in semiotics, for example, which for some people is very boring, but for me it's amazing. The structure of humor has to do with this, with constructing normal and then break it. That's what you were expecting, you know. And then you laugh because you weren't expecting that. But when you laugh, you also think, you know, because those it makes you stop or change in a way. And yeah, you were mentioning the ducks series. And these are ceramic?
Yeah, they're porcelain.
Porcelain, sorry. Yeah. And what can you say about like designing this series of works of the ducks?
Yeah, so this is something that shocked me when I first arrived in London.
Like, right. Yeah, we go back to that question.
Yeah, when I go to the Chinatown, like it was really a funny experience for me, but it looks so strange. It's like all these ducks hanging on the windows.
Right.
Yeah, and we don't really do that. At least not in the cities in Beijing or the city I grew up. Like, we don't do that. But when I'm looking at them, I was like looking at them like a foreigner. But in a way, like I guess like my European friends or like people living in London, when they go to Chinatown, they would think probably like this is how China look like in China, but it is not. So, but the duck is kind of like became almost like a symbol, because it's like on this Chinatown street, it's like all the restaurant had these ducks on the window, and so it's like it become like a symbol in a way. And I was going to British Museum a lot, and when you go there and you can see like all the porcelains and ceramics, and they represent something like a really high culture symbol in a way. And so I was trying to combine the both is to do with this complex imagery we have of China. And so I tried like different patterns, like the very traditional flower patterns, like from Ming Dynasty. And when I used the glazing color, I was also trying to find like those old glazing color, but mimicking the Ming dynasties or even Yuan dynasty. Like because if you look closely, they have like this rusty dot in them. So I said like I don't want the blue glaze, the blue and white porcelain look like a really modern commercial one, but more like the old style. Yeah.
These patterns of the flowers that are traditionally from this Ming era.
Yeah, and the patterns, they were more three-dimensional, because now when you see, when you go to buy like a vase, like most of those patterns are more flat. It's like you're looking at them from above. Yeah.
Okay, so no perspective in the drawing.
Yeah, but not like completely. I still see like a few. Sometimes like they have they have like an angle, so it's not totally flat. Yeah, but not that popular.
And it's not like you make sculpture, but for each one of these process, you go with someone that makes it, and either you learn how to make it, and this is part of the process in a way, right?
I mean, like it's like not completely, because I also make works myself, like build this, like for example the bronze bird or something to make the model, but like a big percentage of my work is like I try to find these people or these craftsmen to help me, because the technique like I work with, they were centuries old and they require like a high skill, and I go to these people and tell them like what I'm thinking, and they may think it's weird or scary, and to convince them and to learn and to work with them and to create the work.
So you learn in this case how to model the dark and then put it in the oven and then the glazing and so.
Yeah, and when we put the clear sprays glazing color, we were like use it in the old way, like you blow it from your mouth to the darks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I have videos of that.
This is what you're saying about methods of production in a way. Like ancient methods of production are included a lot of effort, and they take a lot of time to do, and they in most cases are highly specialized at the same time, like you said. And I'm not inventing anything, because I already read this is related to what you do, but I find it very interesting that your work is also talking about the juxtaposition of these methods of production, like an antique one that takes time, that takes care, that is not perfect, and the contemporary machine-run industrial method of production, right? So you talk a lot about, or you work a lot about this tension in a way between these two ways, because the new ways should not take time, should be all like serial and the same, and they are related to a utilitarian, let's say technocratic world, right? And it seems that there's no time anymore for taking the time for doing some things that are craftsmanship, things that seems to belong to a different world already, right?
And it also become like a luxury, very expensive thing to do these days. Yeah, but it's I found it's really interesting, and it's resonate actually with these techniques, like in the history, in my culture. For example, the gold embroidery, like when goes back to the history, is used to decorate the figures on the empire or the royal family's clothes, and sometimes it's made with real gold. So the normal people, they can't afford it, or they are not allowed to have like this gold dragon something on their clothes. Yeah, so it is like a symbol of power, and it's like labor time consuming, but also the material is very expensive and normal people can't afford it. And nowadays it's not that like a representation of power anymore, but it's still very expensive because now everything is mass produced, made in China, industrially, like object, and this handmade, they are slow, they take labor. And even in China, it's also very expensive to do this handmade thing. Yeah, so I'm kind of like thinking about like how it is in the contemporary context. It's also like a luxury technique, a thing, and to make some work about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy, and that's why what you do with this same technique, you portray, let's say, objects of mass production, of industrial mass production, like a screw or with this golden technique, as if it were this gold.
And because normally this technique is used to make something more complicated and small, like a animal, but I made them like bigger, so the gold line was like kind of like going around to fill the shape. So, and it's also made from the metallic thread. So when you look at it, it's highly reflective. It almost have like a three-dimensional illusion when you look at it from this way and you go.
It has this particular texture that is very attractive visually.
Yeah, and that was actually a surprise. I only discovered that once, like it's the first one I did is the fake tooth, the gold tooth. Yeah, and I only discovered that when the tooth already like halfway there. I said, oh, this is very interesting.
What do you mean is halfway there?
Which means like the embroidery process has already started. It's almost finished. And when I look at it, I say, okay, because normally I saw the same technique used on, for example, qipao or people traditional clothes, and they are normally so small, like you don't see this three-dimensional effect. But when you make it big and flat and it goes around and you see it in there, I thought, oh, this is very interesting. I need to do more, like, and to explore like this materiality.
Yeah, definitely has a very attractive texture when you have it more big. It's more about exposing also the material itself. And the gold has a lot of connotations, at least in Western painting history, mostly in religious painting, and was related to kind of sacred or religious godlike features in a painting. And they used to, I think, use also gold in the color.
Yeah.
So thematic-wise, I think is great, this kind of search you have, because it lets you play kind of always looking the same or exploring the same object of study, but you are free, let's say, to do this with different techniques, which are always justified in the concept, but you don't have to limit yourself to only one technique to look what you're looking for, let's say, in your artistic research.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, when you decided to expand from photography to these more multidisciplinary works, you know, when do you feel, or how do you feel this process came to be from your experience?
The beginning part was very struggling because I did like documentary photography, and I was writing a lot. And when I first tried to bring like these things from my culture to what I learned about contemporary art, and there was like a process of me to get my work more sophisticated, and I didn't have any gap between my bachelor and bachelor and master degree. And I went to Royal College of Art, and they are very harsh on you, like all the credit. And I have produced work that my tutor may think that's not mature enough or it's too simple.
Naive.
Yeah. So they also like sometimes question like your direction, and so I was questioning like a lot the first year when I tried to do something about like yeah.
Sometimes studying something helps you not specifically for what you studied, but because of what you learned that you don't want to. Maybe helps you to realize that you want to include other completely different disciplines, in your work. And another series from you is this tiger cautions.
Tigress cautions,
These tigers cautions that, right, because you also parallel maybe, but you also work a lot with the concept of the femininity, of the concept of fertility that is embodied in a lot of this iconography, also ancient, traditional, from China, also from the Western world. So tigress, but they are this naive thing your tutor was talking about, but that is very serious the way it dialogues with culture history in a way, right? It's you told me when I visit you in the studio that these were traditionally made for kids or something like that.
Yeah, they were more like toys, but also in the history they were like tiger pillows or like a tiger night bottle, like it's like a tiny toilet or something. But there were also these tiger toys, like it's a tradition to give this tiger toy to a newborn baby and as like a symbol to be in good health or protect you from all the evil spirits. Yeah, and I had one when I was young, but not anymore because when my family was moving to Beijing, like it's gone. And so with each tigress, I was playing with the material, like rather than the material we normally use for these toys, I was like printing something on the canvas to form them, or to have like either the comic books or my own photo collages like printed and then to form this tiger toy.
These tigers are like a kind of like a cushion, you would say, or a pillow.
Yeah, you can. I mean, like with the cushion, you would normally make them more flat, so you can put your head on them.
Right.
Yeah, and the first few tigers I made was like referencing a lot about this actual toy form. So they have a big head and a big tail, but a really shrinked body.
Yeah.
And that one is not like used for pillow, but it's like similar, but like more 3-dimension, like wavy in a way.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, and but I also did like a few like the tigers with two head, like a one male, one female, and two gender on one body to explore like this fertility worship in the history. So the ability to reproduce without anyone else. So you have two gender, and I have seen like these two gender on one object on like a blade sword like in the museum, or like a pottery pot. And so they have this reference.
These are very ancient, these figures, right?
Yeah,
with two heads.
Yeah. And I thought about it, and then I find this very old wedding bed sheet, like from the 80s, and so I bought it. Like, oh, it's old, so it becomes a bit precious, but not so much. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to cut it and made them into like this tiger about fertility. And on this wedding bed sheet, they have this Chinese character xi. So it's like a combination of two characters, like xi means like marry or like a happiness. And when you put them the same together and double it, it becomes like something means like marriage. So it has this Chinese character on the body. So I try to explore different like themes with different tigers as well. Yeah.
And this, let's say, also search or exploration on the aspect that has to do with gender, let's say. It's you feel that for your condition of being a woman, this is something that is more or less an obligation to do, or you feel like this is part of your cultural study in a way, and you feel detached from it?
I feel both, like both are involved. I mean, like there was a time when I was younger, like but probably a bit early to think about this, like this fertility thing, and I was like, because as a woman, I guess you can't not think about it. Like if like at a certain point, like you want kid. So I was confused. So in my work, 3-4 years ago, I did like a lot like about fertility, but and then when I look more into the history and I see this worship, and so they were like both part like in it. So right now, like it's not like the main focus. It was the main focus like 2017 or something, but now, but sometimes I still touch on this, but in a more funny way. For example, I put both in my sculpture and on my print this old Chinese saying, but not a saying, but more something they carved on these sacrificial vessels, like they use in the ceremony. They carve this line there in not in modernized Chinese, but in very like the picture or like old language, like they carve like 子子孙孙永保用, and the meaning of this is like my children and my grandchildren and the children of my grandchildren will always have this pressure and will always use this pressure. So they use it in like all this ceremony and thing. And this is something about fertility as well. It's like your bloodline goes all the way and always continuing. So and I found that. And I was like, okay, I want to use it. It's just like, and I put them on my sculpture. Like I carved it myself, like on bronze, and also I put it in my print.
Yeah.
But more like in like a joke or something. So I was thinking like the collector, and so if the collector buy it, and maybe his or her children will like continuing, like having this artwork or something. So it's like
it sounds like out of a very powerful ritual. You know, something that's an invocation that has some sort of power. There's a lot of oral history traditions or poems that have this feeling in a way. And but as you say, you use this in juxtaposition with other elements in the composition that maybe because of the colors or because of the morphology, they reduce the seriousness of this other thing. It's more, as you say, in a joke, but it's not completely a joke in a way. It's something that makes you think about it, so to say.
And also something more related to you right now, but it also like I guess the meaning kind of changed, but you can always go back to the history to learn like at the beginning what it means and how it can relate. But I guess more in a personal narrative way, like I kind of want to force or let people like to provoke to think like you can still relate to it.
It's interesting because you provoke not only from a Western perspective, but you also provoke from a perspective of your grandparents' world, for example. You told me with these tigresses, your grandmother was saying, like, why do you paint it with these colors? It's very ugly.
Oh, that's not my grandmother.
Okay.
That's a old lady, like because like she know how to make these tigers. So the
traditional style.
Yeah, because I need to learn and work with her to get there. And yeah, she was your tiger is too colorful. Oh, God, it's like, oh, why? And I can't say like, oh, because I was like referencing like some pop art or something. Yeah. So she said like either like the way of expression of the tiger, because the face, like when I paint them first, it's like some are more totem like, so it's very geometric, but some are more human like, and this like old lady, she's in her 70s. She like she think like the face looks it's just not her style, or like it looks too smart or something, like in her word. I was like, what too smart? I was thinking the taggers, they look too stupid to me. Yeah, so there was like also like a generation gap with people I work with.
Yeah, I think that's much, it's like a double front of tension for you. There's the generational cultural, transcultural thing, and there's also the transcultural thing, like more horizontally, you know, like this post 20th century East and West thing that is transforming in a way, geopolitically, also a digital era, and so. How do you think about this, and do you project in your mind if, let's say, we are going towards something more mixed in a way and not so separated? You know what I mean? So not so many cultural shocks in a way.
I guess it came more naturally. So I wasn't like, of course, like I am conscious of it, but it's like it comes to me and my art practice very naturally, because this is something I experience and it's already part of my story or something. I use them like, it's not like I was like forcing, okay, I need to bring them, or like I should stay away, but it's like just there. And I can't help, like, you know, but I am like conscious or like reflecting that sometimes. Yeah.
And are you optimistic or pessimistic about how things are going, like worldwide? That are you thinking about, for example, climate change or this kind of very real, let's say, transformational, like in a very concrete way, right? It's becoming a topic more and more, and even if you don't work with this as an object of study, maybe you think about it or you worry about it.
I mean, like deep down, I'm not optimistic. Deep down, I'm pessimistic, if that's a word, right?
Yes.
And but I kind of like approach it in a more optimistic way, in a more like playful or joyful way, a humorous way to do it. But deep down, I'm like not like
inside. I'm screaming.
Inside, like
it's a way to process it in a way.
Yeah.
For some, it's the last grand thematic or topic in a way. Yeah. And how do you picture? I know you told me you are pessimistic, but do you picture the future in a possible happy outcome in that way?
I mean, that depends. Like when you talk about the future, is it like more recent or more far? Or
I
like
don't know. The future every time comes faster for me, so I can.
Yeah, right now I think it's going in a good way. Yeah, it's like, for example, the art world become more transparent, and women, like compared to 100 years ago, is definitely
Of
better.
course.
Yeah, and we
there's still work to do, but
with the AI and the machine, like there were more like people can be free from the labor work, but to use like more be. Like right now I think it's going in a good way. Yeah.
And for you as an artist, right now you are living in Berlin. For how long?
2 years and 3-4 months.
And you are represented by a couple of galleries.
Yeah, I was very lucky. Even like because I think I'm very lucky to find like 2 galleries, even like in this pandemic time. Yeah.
The Hayes Gallery and the BBA
Gallery. Yeah.
And do you project to stay in Berlin? Are you projecting something special, or what's your next step?
So I have like a solo show this September at the Hayes Gallery, and I'm planning to do like an installation with porcelain and with light in the space. So it's more because before, like my works, they have like this object feeling. They're small and they are contained in itself. But now I want to do like a bigger installation, like with porcelain and with other material, for people to experience it more immersively, and I'm also working on like a series of bronze sculptures, and some textile work. Doing and also probably do more art fairs this year. Yeah.
Hopefully, art fairs are coming back. No, like
they already almost, but not totally there. But yeah.
Okay, we will leave links in the description for your works and your shows. And thank you very much for being here.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Thanks everyone for listening. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye.
High five.
Okay.
If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to give us a like and a comment under the video. If you want to see more, click here and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.